Another year in film has gone by, and honestly, aside from whatever this was,
Don't you know, baby? Child, don't you know, baby?
it was a pretty good year for movies. And apologies for my voice. I recently tested positive for COVID, fully vaccinated, boosted. I would highly recommend anyone that isn't to get vaccinated as soon as you can. Rather than do a 10 best films list, instead I'll be doing 20 because I don't know how to stop myself from doing less work. While I didn't get to see every film this year, these are the films that I consider to be the best that came out. If there's a film that's on this list that should be, let me know down in the comments. Since there's 20 films to talk about, let's not waste any time and get started. Starting off is Cherry. I made a full review for this, so I won't go into too much detail about this film. I think what compels me so much about this film is not just the stellar performances from Tom Holland and Sierra Bravo, it's how far the Russo brothers went with their direction of this film. It's clear that because of Avengers Endgame, they got a blank check to do whatever they wanted, so they chose a story that could fill multiple films and genres all in one. From the way it's shot to how the story plays out, it's clear these two were influenced by multiple films, directors, and styles, but the film still finds an identity all of its own. If you haven't checked this one out yet, I highly recommend it, and I also recommend you read the book the film is based on as well. Up next is Nobody. Yeah, if you've paid attention to this channel this past year, you'll know pretty well how much I love this movie. Like Cherry, I have a review and video essay posted, so I won't go into too much detail either. Obviously, having Saul Goodman do all the action himself was enough of a selling point for me, but what made me fall in love with this film is how well and tightly written it is. The film comes from writer Derek Kolstad, who wrote all the John Wick movies, and if you've seen those films, you know how well he is at coming up with not just action scenarios, but how to subtly build up the world around our main character. Everything from his past to how this world works to the inner struggles of our main character, they're all written in a subtle way that's never too in your face and is easy to follow. If you haven't checked this one out yet, I don't know why you're still watching this, go watch Nobody. Next on the list is The Mitchells vs. the Machines. Produced by Phil Lord and Chris Miller, the guys that created the 21 Jump Street movies, the Lego Movie, and Rowan produced Into the Spider-Verse. If you've seen any of those films, their fingerprints are all over this. I could go on for hours talking about this movie. Every single element works to an amazing degree. The characters are not just entertaining, but their personalities and arcs are some of the best I've seen in any recent animated film. The animation is very reminiscent of Spider-Verse, but still has a distinct style that's very easy to fall in love with. The comedy is some of the strongest I've seen in any film of the year. There's practically nothing negative I had to say about this film. It's available on Netflix and home video, so go check it out right now. Like, right now. Up next is In the Heights. While I haven't seen the Broadway show, I still loved this movie. Directed by John M. Chu, this film brings back the giant bombastic movie musical after being gone for a pretty long time. Sure, there have been plenty of movie musicals to come out over the past several years, but to see a film not only have multiple musical numbers full of life and imagination, but to see the director not be afraid to lean into the fantastical elements of musical numbers makes me fall in love with this film even more. Incredible music, moving and charming performances, musical numbers just full of life and energy. In the Heights is a great start to a year filled with great movie musicals. Next is a sequel I originally didn't want, but am forever happy that it exists, A Quiet Place Part 2. When the original came out back in 2018, it was one of those horror movies that not only gave me characters that I wanted to see survive because of how well written they were, but it ended on a good note of finality. But now, there's a sequel, and usually horror movie sequels end up being the level of quality of films like It Chapter 2 and Don't Breathe 2.
What just happened?
However, to my and everyone else's surprise, A Quiet Place Part 2 is not only an amazing sequel, but it continued the story in a way that felt natural and meaningful. It's always hard for sequels to justify their existence outside of money, and for writer-director John Krasinski to have found narrative elements to help grow our characters and world is honestly really impressive. Amazing performances, great suspense, fantastic sound design, and a truly thrilling ending. A Quiet Place Part 2 is a horror sequel that's worth every penny. Next is the greatest video game movie of all time, sorry Sonic, Werewolves Within. Like you, finding out this was based on a video game honestly shocked me. I haven't played the game it's based off of, so I won't be comparing the movie to the game here. Similar to Knives Out, this comedy murder mystery follows residents of a small town in the mountains who are divided against one another for a multitude of reasons as they have to work together to find out who among them is a werewolf terrorizing the town. Led by an all-star cast, Werewolves Within not only has clever direction and editing, but its sharp writing combined with political commentary makes this one of the funniest films of the year. A mystery that's intriguing, jokes flying a mile a minute at you, Werewolves Within is destined to become a cult comedy classic. While I may hate the first one, I certainly don't hate its sort of sequel. The Suicide Squad. If you're familiar at all with any of James Gunn's films, then this will feel right home to you. Sharply distinct characters, a plot that can go to insane places you don't expect, and a surprising amount of heart, The Suicide Squad will happily wash out any bad taste left over by the original film. DC has been on a pretty good track record lately, and The Suicide Squad is another great addition to the DCEU. Hopefully one day we'll be able to see this squad return again. Well, those that survived. If there's one thing I wasn't expecting to enjoy, was a trippy fantasy film leaving me with more questions than answers. The film I'm talking about is in fact The Green Knight. While I've talked about A24 films on this channel before, often you won't see me gravitating towards more experimental films or films that purposefully try to not explain things to me. While I wouldn't say The Green Knight is an experimental film, it certainly isn't mainstream either. Everything from its visual aesthetic to its cinematography, its world building, its performances, it all works to levels that I never expected. Even its ending, which at first I wasn't liking, actually turned into one of my favorite endings of the year. While it's not for everyone, The Green Knight is a fantasy film unlike any other, and one that's definitely worth checking out. After seeing trailers for this movie for a year and a half, I'm so happy it turned out good. And that film is Free Guy. While Ryan Reynolds' shtick is starting to get old, look at Red Notice if you need a good example, if it's given to the right team of people and story, it can still work well. And thankfully, Free Guy is one of those films. Funny and charming characters and performances, fun action, Taika Waititi as the villain, what more could you ask for? Certainly a surprise, but one I'll happily check out again. While there were horror movies this year that were just okay or whatever the hell Don't Breathe 2 was, Candyman was certainly not one of those films. Directed by Nia DaCosta and co-written and produced by Jordan Peele, Candyman is one of those soft reboot horror films that not only delivers on the scares, but brings the story to new and interesting levels that we hadn't seen before. Exploring Candyman in the world of racial injustice, racism, and police brutality made for not only a thought-provoking film, but one that terrifies on multiple levels. A terrific cast, great scares, and a fantastic ending makes this a very easy film to recommend. Movie 2 out of 4 for the MCU in 2021, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. While it's understandable that people are done with the MCU at this point, if they keep making movies like this, I'll happily stay on board for years to come. While its third act is the only real issue I have with this film, everything else is stellar. The cast is pitch perfect, the action is some of the best we've gotten in any MCU movie, the villain is perfect and complex. It's easily one of the best MCU movies to come out in a while. If you're still on board the MCU train or just want a great martial arts movie, then Shang-Chi is one you should check out if you haven't already. If there was a way to finish Daniel Craig's run as James Bond, then No Time to Die is the way to do it. While Rami Malek's villain wasn't the strongest, the story, characters, action all led to a conclusion that was not only satisfying, but surprisingly emotional. Bond films rarely try to have a sense of finality to them, and for this to end on such a definitive note was a welcome change of pace for this series. Hopefully the next Bond series will be distinct like this one and continue to surprise us in ways that we didn't expect. The sandiest movie that ever did sand. Dune. While it may only be part 1 of 2, Dune is that rare big-budget sci-fi film focused more on the characters and their journeys they go on, rather than big action and spectacle. And while there's certainly that here, it's best to warn you that this is a slow movie and will do things many audiences might not enjoy. If you've seen Blade Runner 2049, then you'll know exactly what to expect here. A rich and interesting world, interesting mythology, incredible effects, sound, cinematography, Dune is a film best seen on the biggest screen that you can find. It's no Scott Pilgrim, but Last Night in Soho is a welcome departure for director Edgar Wright. Wright is one of those filmmakers that goes all in on every film they work on. Bringing in his trademark cinematography and editing he uses on every film, Wright created a horror film unlike most that have come out. While many will have mixed feelings on the ending, Last Night in Soho delivered an experience I won't soon forget. An interesting story with twists and turns I didn't see coming, fascinating characters, and surprising scares. I hope to see more out there films like this from Edgar Wright in the future. Fuck the haters. This movie is amazing. Eternals might not have won over the critics, but it certainly won me over. Taking a focus more on the drama and characters and letting the action take a step back, director Chloe Zhao brought some fresh life into the MCU in ways I wasn't expecting. Introducing a large cast of characters we've never seen before in this world is tricky and difficult enough as it is, but to make me not only remember them all, but care about them thanks to their amazing performances and distinct personalities and character traits is even more impressive. This certainly isn't going to be a film for everyone, but it is certainly not the worst the MCU has done, by a long shot. Beautiful cinematography, amazing characters, and a story that surprised me from beginning to end. I hope we can see more films like Eternals in the MCU. Not since Logan have I seen a western that's brought as much life and energy to the genre as The Harder They Fall did. Co-written and directed by I'm going to fuck this up. Co-written and directed by James Samuels, this Netflix Western is an utter blast from start to finish. Dripping with style and fun, Samuels brings fresh life to not only this type of story, but the entire genre as a whole. Most Westerns these days have transitioned to being depressing stories exploring the character's psyche, and while that's fine, this film just goes, we're gonna have fun, and you're going to like it. And I could not be more fine with that. With an all-star cast, fantastic and stylistic action, interesting characters, The Harder They Fall is a Western that I hope we get more of in the near future. While we know Lin-Manuel Miranda for writing and starring in Hamilton and working on multiple musicals in the past and present, him as director was something I never considered until I saw Tick, Tick, Boom. Directed by Miranda and starring Andrew Garfield, this musical not only proves Garfield can do no wrong as an actor, but shows Miranda has surprising talent behind the camera. Crafting a film that feels unique among recent movie musicals, Miranda finds a surprising balance between the fantastical elements and in-the-moment elements that come with musicals. We talked about this more on our podcast Geek Speak, link in the description, so go check it out for more in-depth thoughts on the film. If you're a fan of Andrew Garfield, Lin-Manuel Miranda, or musicals in general, then you should have no problem seeking this one out. As long as we're on the subject of musicals, might as well talk about Steven Spielberg's best movie in years, West Side Story. I kid you not. I have not seen Spielberg direct this good in a very long time. Most of his recent films have been good, but they never felt like films he needed to tell, if that makes sense. But here you can tell he desperately wanted to make this. Everything from the amazing performances, especially from newcomer Rachel Zegler, the fantastic musical sequences, the balance of the fun of the story and the harsh reality of it, to its gorgeous cinematography, West Side Story is a movie that film lovers and musical lovers should check out as soon as they can. While this film may divide a lot of fans, The Matrix Resurrections delivered so much of what I didn't know I wanted from this series. While I'm a recent fan of the Matrix films, I still found so much to enjoy here. Everything from how meta the film is, to how much it destroys the concepts of reboots and sequels, to how much it makes the romance between Neo and Trinity work better than ever before, to the new and great additions to the cast, Resurrections takes risks that ultimately pay off in the end. If you enjoyed The Matrix or even meta films in general, check this one out as soon as you can. And finally, you knew that this one was coming. We can't end this list without talking about my favorite film of the year, Spider-Man: No Way Home. Obviously, I'm not going to go into any spoilers, but I'll say if you haven't seen this yet, then do yourself a favor and see it as soon as you can. I can't stress that enough! This is easily my favorite Spider-Man movie of all of them, even including Spider-Verse. Taking this peer's story to new heights and dangers, No Way Home takes huge risks in where the story ends up, but they're risks that pay off big time. No Way Home understands this character perfectly, and seeing his growth from Homecoming to here is amazing to see. Everything from the action to the story to the return of villains from films prior to its incredible third act and ending, No Way Home will satisfy every kind of Spider-Man fan and leaves me excited for what comes next for him. Well, that was my stupidly long list of my favorite films of the year. It was a damn good year for movies, and I'm excited to see what 2022 has in store. Were there any films I missed? Am I completely wrong about all of this? Let me know down in the comments below, and remember to like, share, and subscribe for more content coming in the near future, and I will see you all next time.